Ahoy. So I want to talk about Imposter Syndrome, and I think the way it kind of bottlenecks a lot of people in making the games they want to make, and yeah, just generally doing the stuff they want to do. So I think most of us who are trying to make cool video games, making video games is difficult. It's not something you just kind of fall into. I think most of us grew up playing video games we thought were great, and we thought, wow, the people who made these games were real heroes, and I want to be like them. I want to grow up and be big and strong like my video game daddies, and all that. I mean, for me, things like Ultima Underworld 2, and when I found out that Warren Spector was involved with that, and Deus Ex and everything, which I am playing these days, it all kind of adds up to you wanting to be like your fathers, you know? The heroes who inspired you, and yes, you know, it's video games, so they will tend to be male. And that is where Imposter Syndrome can easily come in, because you end up playing a bunch of video games, you end up developing fairly decent taste in video games, and then when you try to make your own, you find you can maybe not even make Pac-Man, and you think, man, I must really suck. I must suck compared to Warren Spector or whoever. Surely I'm not as powerful as the heroes of old. And I think this might even be a very long-standing thing. It's kind of connected to the survivor bias stuff I was talking about before, where we look at the stuff that succeeded and we don't see what built up to it. And yeah, this happens with nostalgia as well, right? Like we look at the best things from the past compared to just whatever's to hand in the present, and it can easily end up with this illusion where surely our forefathers were real heroes, surely our forefathers were Atlantean demigods, and now what we have is a lesser son of greater sires.
You are a lesser son of greater sires.
So I think that's an illusion you get all over the place. Just, it's easy to look at the absolute best things that inspired you, and then look at where you are and think, surely I could never get there. And this is where I think there is a bit of a gap you've got to overcome. Like, if you want to overcome the imposter syndrome, it's quite possible that where you are now, you can't do what your heroes did, and that's fine, because you only knew your heroes when they became heroic, right? So you can become a hero. It is not some innate thing that this is kind of nature versus nurture, but I think pretty much everybody can lift themselves up into heroism, whatever their definition of heroism is. And I think it helps to look in more detail at the stories of your heroes as well. Like, I got the Doom book back there. You can just about make out Masters of Doom in the picture, I think. And yeah, I found it really inspiring to read about John Romero and John Carmack, the two Johns, being kind of the powerhouse behind Doom, and the struggles they went through. I think neither of them really had great childhoods, and they ended up doing a ton of work and learning a bunch of programming, and you start to see how you can go step by step, and these people do not just start out as kind of Atlantean demigods bestriding the earth or whatever, and just, you know, effortlessly make Doom one day or something. It might seem that way because maybe we first noticed them when Doom hit the scene, right? But then you look and you find, oh right, they made Commander Keen, and they made Wolfenstein, and before then it was a bunch of other stuff that all led up to it. And you start to see what goes on, and they're under the tip of the iceberg there. So I think that's an important discovery as well. Like, if you do have these gaming heroes that you want to emulate, study their lives in more detail, and don't just sort of hero worship them, because then you will find that, oh right, these guys were mere men, and yeah, I'm going to use mostly masculine language because they do tend to be men, but you know, they were mere men, they were not Atlantean demigods, and it is possible for you to uplift yourself and become like them in turn.
I believe there's a hero in all of us.
And I find that the next stage of this is kind of a long, unglamorous process of humbling. Like, to make Super Space Galaxy, I made a bunch of demos for Super Space Slayer 1 and 2 to begin with. I tried out a bunch of gameplay possibilities and things before I made those. So a lot came into that you don't see. That's kind of a survivor bias thing as well. Like, you haven't seen, I think, the 3 or 4 weird demos I made that didn't quite work, but maybe taught me how to get the gameplay formula I made for that. And even then, those games are not some wild success, so you don't even really get to see that game unless I'm talking about it in these videos, really. So what you then normally have to do is you have to build the stuff you want one piece at a time. You might find that it's a real slog to begin with, like you have, say, pathfinding, and you just have to sit down and figure out pathfinding and ask people about pathfinding and find out how to implement it in your game and find out that it doesn't work. Like the system I have to make the planets in Super Space Galaxy is in its 6th version, I think. I did horrible things to make that. But now it's effortless and it just kind of looks like magic and I know how it's done. So there is a long process you might call the humbling, where you do have to build up your skills, and it's confusing and embarrassing, and it's good just to hear that this is actually normal. In fact, this is probably what the people you admire did as well. They also went through this stuff. It's just that it doesn't get talked about much, probably because a lot of people don't even want to hear it. I think of this in kind of Bill and Ted terms as well. Like, I grew up with the Bill and Ted movies, and yeah, I think near the end of the 2nd movie, because Bill and Ted are just these 2 random dudes who are in a band, basically, and they've been told that they've got this heroic destiny to save the world with their music, basically, but they're kind of just 2 random dudes for most of the movies, and then right near the end of the 2nd movie they suddenly realise they're not even really that good at playing their instruments, and they're going to have to go off and train, which is just such weird timing.
Maybe we ought to get good, Ted.
I feel like that's kind of it. Like, you've got to have both. You've got to have this conviction that you are headed somewhere heroic, and you do have this heroic destiny, but at the same time, you don't just get powered up in one go. You do have to kind of go off and just actually practice your instruments. So that's the other thing, like, you might be surprised what potential you have. So if you want to take the heroic journey and take things one step at a time and just acknowledge where you are and stick to where you want to end up, come join us in the Discord server and we can share progress in our games, share the right questions, and we're all gonna make it together, brah. Most indie game devs never finish their game. Why? No structure, no accountability, and no support. That's why I'm opening 5 private coaching spots to help devs get unstuck and finally finish their game. Message me game plan in my Discord and let's chat.